Um, Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see everybody here. The topic is covering China. China is one, if not the most important story in the world today. Everywhere I go, probably everywhere you go, you go to Russia, go to South Africa, we touches China. China is always the invisible elephant in the room. And investigative journalism for China is also important. It can be done. It's being done. It's not easy. It's very challenging. So today we have 3 journalists who are going to share with us their experiences about their stories and advice for us. We have Yiman Li from mainland China. Right? We have Wei Zhou, also from mainland China, and we have Christine from the UK, who works for the Financial Times. I'm not going to do the instruction for the sake of time because they're very bios, excellent bios. I'll post it on the internet, on the site. So the way we do it, we have 1 hour. We'll start with Yiman, right? Right. And the speakers would talk for 10 minutes, and then we'll have questions. We'll open up to the floor, right? Okay? All right. Yiman.
Okay. Hello, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here to, what's that?
Voice recorder.
To control the slide. You can see it from there.
Oh, I see. So it's...
Yes, you don't need that.
Yeah, I don't need that.
I'll take this.
Thank you. Well, let me try. Here? Oh, I see.
Yes.
It's my great pleasure to be here to learn from you. And today, I'd like to share with everybody how we report the Tianjin explosion just happened 2 months ago in China. And the big explosion killed 165 people, and 8 are still missing, and more than 700 people injured, and 17,000 homes were destroyed. And the first picture I took it from at least 1 kilometer away from the original site of the explosion. And I found a lot of chemicals just around the site and on the streets nearby, and many people are injured. Okay, I'll start with this. And so there are many questions. What is the cause of the explosion, and why were residential blocks built so close from the toxic and the explosive chemicals, and which government department should take the responsibility, and what's the approval process, and was there any illegal activities or any corruption activities? Here are the directions on the way of looking into identity of owners of the warehouse, responsibilities of government officials, and the EIA, environmental impact assessment, and the safety assessment. And those are very critical to this case. And other administrative approvals, and the nature of the explosives. And the most important thing I found is that the full text of the environment impact assessment, which was very helpful to prove that they have committed the crime. one of the document from expert from the central government, and a second source from the local government. Okay. It was how I discovered the actual amount and the kinds of the chemicals. I see. There was a rescue command center in Tianjin. They are not allowed. The reporters were not allowed to get into the camp, but I put on a Sinopec uniform and pretend to be a chemical engineer, and I was mingled with rescuers, experts, and the officials, and pick up conversations from the group. And with them, I got the updated chemicals found from the site and from around the houseware, and compared with the EIA document, we got the evidence of the wrongdoings, especially the sodium cyanide. The maximum amount of the sodium cyanide is only 10 tons, but in fact, they kept 700 tons of that toxic chemical in that place to make more money. And it's a current situation. After that, 11 officials were arrested, and so did the company owner and the central government. The investigation is continuing, and the case of the explosion is still unknown. And there are many middle-class homeowners who are still fighting for compensation. And here are some tips, especially for the foreigners, if you want to participate such report in China. You'll get nothing from the press conferences, so stay away. And don't go through PR officials, contact the officials directly. And another one is academics are more likely to talk freely than those from government research institutions. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Yuman is very modest. Let's give her a hand, right? And before the session, we had a talk, and they said, don't go to press conferences. I said, not at all. And she said, no, because you get nothing. Not only that you will get nothing, you will expose yourself. Yeah. You will be known as a reporter working in the area, so stay away. So that's good advice. And then there's also a context to doing this story, because when the explosion happened, immediately the government issued a ban of reporters. They're not supposed to go to the scene. They're not supposed to write their original stories. And the media was ordered to use dispatches from the state agency only. But then in that situation, because the explosion is so huge and so devastating, more than 1,000 local reporters rushed to the scene, that's phenomenal. They rush to the scene, they find the ban, and you have young reporters like Iman and others trying to dig up documents, follow documents, and look for sources. They went undercover, just like things like what we would do. But the situation is much harder. Right? So that's the context. Right? So next we have Joe Wei. right?
Okay.
And she's going to talk about her work in investigating the relationship between two
Okay, it's better.
officials, right?
Yep.
Looking at documents and all that. So,
Okay. Is it okay for me to stand here because like
It's too
it's
small.
awkward to watch that? Okay. Yeah, I know. So the beginning slide looks a little bit awkward. Then let me introduce myself a little bit. My name is Zhou Wei. I'm a BBC China producer. But this morning, I used to be an investigative reporter for a Chinese magazine. But this morning, my editor just told me that, no, you are not working for us, so we don't want our media's name appear on the screen. So I took one picture out, so that's what you see now. Okay, but never mind. Let's proceed. Sorry.
这个是要跟这个。
Oh, okay. Next. Okay. So last year, when I was still working with that Chinese magazine, I did an investigation into the Lin brothers, especially Lin Jihua. So this is the case I'm talking about. So who is Lin Jihua? So he's the one-time head of the office of former President Hu Jintao, and when Lin Jihua was reported to be under investigation, we started to investigate his siblings, because according to our experience, once an official was put under investigation, then there must be something with his siblings, and all his relatives must be connected to the corruption. So we started to investigate Lin Wancheng, and Lin Wancheng is the youngest brother of Lin Jihua. And Lin Wancheng used to be the former top official of the state-owned Xinhua News Agency. And he did business under the alias Wang Chen. I think he also wanted to keep a low profile. That's just like my editor. And here's what New York Times said, reported about Lin Wancheng. You see the highlighted part. He said Lin Wancheng could become one of the most damaging defectors in the history of the People's Republic, because according to the report by New York Times, he's now in the US. So the Chinese government still hasn't managed to get him back. So here's the story I did. The problem with Lin Wancheng is that we found that Lin's company, he started a company which is called Huijin Lifang. It's a private equity. And from 2008 to 2010, that private equity, Huijin Lifang, invested in 7 companies, and all were listed between 2009 to 2014. The problem is that all the companies weren't listed. Before the list of the companies, some companies like LETV, they had many problems before it was listed. Because first, they have only a few business orders, and second, they filled few revenues. So how did a company like this can go public? So Lin Wancheng invested in the company, and then the company went listed. And after the IPOs, the Huijin Lifang, the company, cashed 22 million USD out. And according to our investigation, the current worth of the shares is still up to 124 million USD. And just 2 or 3 days after we published our story, a top official related to the listing was detained by the party's corruption watchdog. Because our source told me that the official approved the IPO application of the 7 companies invested by Lin Wancheng. So that's why he was taken away for the investigation. So what did I do? Generally, when I did some investigative reporting, the first thing is that, okay, because in China, like most corruptions are related to money. And so we have to find out there are ways to illegally make money. And generally, almost all corrupt officials run companies, some in their relative's name, and some even in a random name, which doesn't seem having any connection with the official himself. So we went to this website. It's called, it's in Chinese. Literally translation, it's called the Company Credit Information website of Beijing Municipal Government. So in this part, so once you access this website, just type a people's name and also a company's name or even an address. Then you will find some simple information of the company, like their shareholders. The shareholder, you will find the names of the shareholders, and you will find what kind of companies have this company invested during the past few years. And once you get this information and you find something interesting, you can go deeper. I will talk about later. So this is the next step. Next step is that we have to hire lawyers to get detailed company registration docs, where you can find the shareholders' ID card, and you will find their residence address in the ID card. Then you can also find where their hometown is, and you can find their address and shareholders and investment, even their mobile numbers. From 2013, China has made regulations that individuals cannot access this kind of detailed company registration docs. But before 2013, all individuals can access that. So after 2013, we have to hire lawyers to search that for us. Of course, you can hire a lawyer, and you can go along with the lawyer and then print out all the docs. But the Bureau just regulates that you can't print out any private information, like the ID number and the mobile number. So what can you do? Use your mobile, and you can take a picture from the screen, and you got all the private information. It's kind of a gray area, but I do that. Okay, and then I know all of you guys, you know what you do with the private information, so I won't elaborate on that. And the other things I do is that because the 7 companies I was investigating, they are listed companies, so I also checked the stock transaction records. It's called eastmoney.com. It's a Chinese website where you can find all the listed companies. Then you can find the top 10 shareholders who held the company's shareholders, and you can find that when did they cash out and how much did they cash out during the past years. So you can, this is what I find. And next, for the Huijin Fund equipment, the Huijin Fund private equity, we find that there are more than 10 shareholders of the company, and it looks like each of the shareholders' names are really strange to me, because I don't know who they are. Even I've got their ID number, I can only tell where they are from. So what I find is that almost all the shareholders, they're from the same city as Lin Wancheng. So that is to say, most of them, they know each other. And then, because you have names, you can also list the possible relationships between each of them. Like, if you find that they have the same surname, then you can assume that they might be relatives, and then you can go just ask around to find the possible relationship between them. And you can also use Google, because we find more than 10 shareholders. So I put each of the shareholders' name and plus Lin Wancheng's name. Then, fortunately, I find 2 or 3 shareholders. They also cooperated on other things. And then you have to talk to everyone in the docs you find. Then what I found is that one of the shareholders, we went to his hometown. He was actually a middle school teacher, and he was teaching. And then I went to I went inside the classroom, and after class is over, I talked to him and said, I said that, do you know Lin Wanchen? Because we found your name on the registration document. He said, no, yes, I know him, but I have nothing to do with that company. He said, okay, just a few years ago, he borrowed my ID card, and because he was my friend, I just lent him my ID card. Then I don't know what happened. So, because Lin Wanchen borrowed his ID card to register a new company in partnership of the other company under Lin Wanchen's name. So that is to say, all the two companies are actually belonging to Lin Wanchen. So Lin Wanchen is the real person in charge. And then the last step, which is often the most difficult part, is to find the white gloves. Do you know what white gloves mean? It's a Chinese term. I think it originated with Taiwan. Literally, it means dirty hands concealed by a pair of white gloves. So it refers to a middleman or outfit that launders corrupt money under a seemingly legitimate front. So that's so the middle school teacher is kind of we call that white gloves. So that's why I said in the third point that you have to talk to everyone in the docs, even they are like more than 20 candidates. So the setbacks is that the access to company registration documents has changed. I think I have talked that before. Is that like individuals can no longer find the registration documents in China. You have to hire a lawyer, and it's always hard to identify relationships with each other because China is so complicated, and they use different clients to run the company for them. Most of the time, the names are just names to you. They don't mean any specific person, and you have to ask all your sources to find that. And because I was doing with the stock market, so I have limited financial knowledge, but my colleagues helped me out. And just 1 minute. And also, the most frustrating part is the delayed publication, because in China we can't investigate high-level officials who are still in power, like the top leader. You all know who he is. You could never investigate him. Even you investigate it, then you cannot publish that. But sometimes, if he's provincial level, you can either do investigation on him, but you can prepare. You can start your investigation and just wait. One day, Xinhua released that blah 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 was taken away, and then you just release your reporting right away. So sometimes that's the way what we did. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, investigating Chinese companies and all these intricate relationships is not easy. But the good news, I guess, there are public records available that you can actually look for company records. You can look for registrations. And so now we have Christine. She investigated in a major company, right, Christine?
The reporters did. I'm Christine Spolar. I'm the investigations editor at the FT. I started the team in 2011, and we started with 2 people who had good skills with databases and with government records. In the 4 years, we've expanded to 2 more people, one in New York and another person in London. But my real remit at the newspaper is to have a sense that there are reporters in every bureau of the Financial Times that could be doing investigations. And we need to think about ways to help them be the best journalists they can be. Part of my job is to give people headspace, to be the person they talk through with stories, and to stay up between time zones to talk to people across the world. One of the stories that I do what are projects which could take 4 months, 5 months, 9 months. But I also do what I call rolling investigations, where somebody on a beat comes to you and says, don't understand why this is happening the way it is. And we begin conversations with questions. And one of those stories this year was the company Hanergy, which is a solar company that was based in China. And it has a listed company in Hong Kong, Hanergy Thin Film. And Miles Johnson, a member of the financial services team at the FT, came to me in January and said, I don't understand this company. I've been talking to people in the solar industry. Its share price has soared in the past year, and it is now worth $18 billion. Now, it was a toy company a couple years ago. It kept the same stock ticker in Hong Kong, but somehow it morphed from a little-known toy company that wasn't doing so well into this solar giant. At the time Miles said he wanted to start investigating, he had gone to Lucy Hornby in Beijing. And so now we're working between time zones. And Lucy said, and Lucy has been there for years, so you have two reporters with expertise in different areas. And Lucy said, yeah, these Chinese companies, they rise in value and sometimes they fall off, but this is how you can have a parent in China that's listed in Hong Kong, and this happens. And Miles said, this is $18 billion. This is not a small cap company. This is a major company. We started looking at it when it was worth that. When two of our bigger stories went out, it was worth $40 billion. And Li Hejun, who had at one point in the first story we called China's 5th richest man, he became China's richest man for a short period while we were reporting on it. So we started with questions, and some of our stories, in fact, were never more than questions. We just kept raising them. And we had the biggest question being, how did a little-known solar company based in China become a $40 billion company? And it turns out that Hanergy was a story about debt and inflated stock valuations, and basically how the Hong Kong stock market was working. So I'm going to show you front pages of the Financial Times because I figure if you know this story, you've been reading it on the web, probably not in the newspaper. But I wanted to show you how seriously the paper played this story in all editions. The first story was basically Miles and Lucy going through company filings and just writing a story saying that the revenue with the company seemed to be coming from the listed company selling equipment to the parent company in China. And the company was having a 50% net profit margin. And that's very interesting. It seems very circuitous if you're selling all your equipment to the parent company and that's your revenue stream. So Lucy got an interview with some of the executives in China, in Beijing. And it was a really good and long interview, of which one of the quotes from the interview was, yes, people are suspicious of us because of our business model and the way that the revenue stream goes, which we thought was interesting. Another thing, just as a manager of a project at this point, Lucy transcribed everything, and she shared the transcription with me. And I think it's really important for editors to go over the transcription with the reporters, even after they think they've had the best quotes out of the story, because there was some great stuff in there that Lucy just didn't think. She was in the confines of how things happen in China, and both Miles and I said, oh, wait a minute, that looks really good. Let's put that in the story. And I think that's a helpful check, being outside the country itself. Miles has never been to China, so it's helpful as they're talking back and forth about the story. So that was a story that raised a lot of questions, and it was very interesting in the reader comments. Then we went further, and Lucy started looking at fundraising material that the company had, as well as financial statements, working with Miles. And we saw that Hanergy Group, and Li Hejun being the owner, had, in fact, he was getting bank loans, but he was relying on shadow lending. And when you go through these trust products, which are common in China, you get a really high percentage rate for your interest rate. So why would you do that if your company is doing really well? They had told us that they had 9 factories in China and that they were not at optimum production at all, which was another reason why we're looking at them and raising questions about the business model. But This was part of the model, and then when they would come up in production in 2 years, we would see that they were the Apple of solar energy. So we again raised questions. And people in Hong Kong kept other sources. Miles had his sources, Lucy had her sources. We had people in Hong Kong also working on the story. They kept saying, it's really interesting, keep going, here's other things you should look at. So Miles comes to me one day and says, you know what I really want to do? I want to download 2 years of tick-by-tick trades of the Hong Kong stock market and see if that stock is acting strangely or unusual in any way. And part of my remit at the FT, I have a background in print, in TV, and in web, and I also worked at Bloomberg. So, and I've been a foreign correspondent, which is why I have an idea about how things work in other countries and maybe the questions you should be asking. So one of my big remits at the FT is we want to do data projects. So I went to the interactive team and the statistics team and anybody who would talk to me and say, can we download the stock market? Do you think we could handle tick-by-tick trades? We first went to Bloomberg data. They had some of the months that we wanted. Then we actually sent some emails to see could we actually get it from the stock exchange itself. And then Miles found a commercial purveyor of trade data. So we downloaded 140 million data points. Yeah, that was our biggest project ever. And of those 140 million, that was 2 years of trades, tick-by-tick data, and 800,000 of those data points were relevant to Hanergy. They were Hanergy trades. And we looked at them in 10-minute intervals, and we looked at the first trade and the last trade within that 10 minutes, and then the first trade of that 10-minute compared to the next 10-minute interval. And we found an unusual pattern that, in the stock market and in trades, timing is everything. And if you traded Hanergy throughout the day, those last 10 minutes, the stock surged unlike any other stock. The share price went up over 500%. The share price rise in that period. And we then went to financial experts, had them look at our raw data, had them look at our analysis. This took weeks. Miles had thought, okay, we can get this done like in a month. Gavin Jackson from the statistics staff was meticulous on this. And this caused a big stir. We were able to say from the experts that you saw an unusual share surge in the last 10 minutes on a regular and remarkable pattern, and that it was an outlier compared to the other stocks. We compared it with other stocks during the same time period. And what do you think could have been? And our experts said, well, it could be an algorithm at play. It could be by chance. It's most likely, their opinion, market manipulation. And that caused quite a stir. This story, and then within 2 months, the stock plunged 47% on May 20th. And by July, it asked then to be taken off the trading floor. And then in July, the regulator banned it from the stock exchange. So we were working as outsiders, really, to the market. But I think that you can look at the China story, the Hong Kong market story, which, of course, has been a big story this year. And what happened with Hanergy was indicative of some of the problems with business practices of companies listed on the stock exchange. So that's, and I just want to say the FT, we're very interested in China. The year before, and I'm showing you this one, the 47% collapse, but the year before, we did a whole look at what happened after the debt crisis and the China's going out policy. How did they take advantage of what happened in Europe? And we did a 5-part series on that by looking at Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Greece, the most hard-hit countries of the debt crisis. And it was really well read. These are pictures, of course, from the newspaper, but online, you just get so many hits from different parts of the country. And those are the links to the stories you'd like to see more of that.
Thank you. Thank you. So I suppose this is the tip of the iceberg. You can pick another company in Hong Kong and do the investigation.
You have to have tips. We had
Yes.
very good human sources on this. There were analysts at the same time we were writing. Analysts were coming out and saying, like, one, look at the coverage, but two, this is our analysis of what is going on with this company. I think it's pairing of reporters. The reason Miles and Lucy were good together was Lucy was saying, you're wrong, and Miles is saying, you're wrong. And I'm just, I'm the arbiter. And I want to hear both of them. And I think that as a manager of investigations, and the same thing happened with 10-minute trade. Miles, the data itself was very interesting. You can get excited about it, but I had good Gavin Jackson, the statistician, saying, I'm going to do the numbers yet again. And both of those guys worked late into the night staring at the screen and doing the calculations. They compounded, they looked at how the share price rose both in average and compounded rates. So they went every which way. And then one of the experts, I believe it was the University of Chicago, spent, I don't remember how many days going over our data trying to see if we'd made a mistake in it. So that you need to do with data projects. I'm really happy the FT had took advantage of that because it was a huge amount, and you had to have collaboration, not just across the globe with Hong Kong and Beijing and London, but across the newsroom with interactive and graphics, telling the story of the 10-minute trade. I want the charts telling the story. So again, we talk about the FT, text plus. Text plus is what's the best way to convey something not quite right in business, and how do you get the charts to do that, or you can animate a video. I don't know, but you have to make the stuff that seems complicated relevant, not simple. You need to make it relevant.
Thank you. Questions? Yes, you want to identify yourself briefly? Yes. Is the mic working?
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for your presentations. My name is Eva Simola, and I come from Finland. I would like to ask Emmanuel Liu. You said that when you got the document, so does it mean that just you walked in and said that I want your EI, environmental and impact assessment, and you got it like that, or was it more difficult? And the other thing is that I've been producing research into IT sector and Nokia and all these companies in China, and also stone breaking in China, and some of the methods have been like yours, that my researchers have gone onto the plants and signed in as temporary workers to find out stuff for you. But are you aware of any risks or any cases where the researcher in disguise, like you in the clothing, who have been caught, and what would happen then? Thank you.
So how do you get the environmental impact statement?
Here's the thing. The environmental impact assessment, 10 years ago, it's a secret to the public, but gradually, not only the government, but also the companies, they are more and more willing to uncover it for the public participation. So in this case, you can find the simple text online of the EIA, but the full text is still not open to all. But it's not illegal for you to get some of the document from the government. But if you want the safety assessment, it's more difficult because for all those years, it's still not so open. So it's maybe because the environment problem in China is so serious that it's the beginning of the reformation in this field. So the Department of the Environment Protection in China is, I think, it's a mostly open department, so you can go easy with them.
Yes, true. Environmental information is relatively more open and accessible.
Yeah.
There's a question over there. No, I think the gentleman raised his hand first. That gentleman over there? Oh, okay. So go ahead. Oh, go ahead. Yes.
I'm no gentleman. My name is John Grobler. I'm a journalist from Namibia. I just want to add a comment, basically to... Hello. Okay.
They're taping it.
Yeah, they're
so
taping.
You got to speak to the mic.
Gentleman speaking. I've been struggling to crack rhino poaching in Africa, and I've discovered that the collaborative approach is far superior. First of all, it covered up the fact that I speak no Mandarin and I can't read it. That's always the biggest problem for reporters outside of China. So I would really like to see more of this happening in the future, because I can tell you, I don't want to talk about what I'm looking at the moment, but let me tell you, if I did not have my Chinese reporter out there in the desert with me, I would still be out there in the desert, looking for stuff that I'm not getting to. So that is, I think that is the way to go from now on. What was also useful in that is that we worked through a small NGO called Oxpeckers, oxpeckers.org, to publish the findings of that. But what I would like to see is, for example, work with somebody like FT or so, push out this bigger story, just to get the public attention fixed on that, because how many people really know about oxpeckers? But everybody knows about FT. Then I've got a question on the FT story. That trade that they were doing, how were they doing? Why was it spiking right at the end? Were they putting in massive orders just before the market closed, or how were they manipulating it?
Well, the owner of Hanergy owns 73% of the shares, so we don't know. Yeah. One thing I just want to clarify. I mean, we have Chinese staff, who were working with Lucy, and you need somebody who hears stuff, and in Hong Kong too. I don't know. Do you think it's just two reporters? They're have people on the ground.
Thank you. Well, I always believe that African journalists and Chinese journalists need to collaborate and work together and find out what the companies are doing, like in Africa. We have a question here? Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Zahid. I'm an investigative reporter for the Express Tribune, partner of New York Times in Pakistan, Islamabad. My question to Christine, thank you for sharing a very wonderful story with us. Actually, I just wanted to know that your reporters were getting all stuff through Information Act from Chinese officials. Did they use other sources as well? How difficult it was for your reporters to collect all this data? Was it not a stumbling block? Because I believe I cover issues related to China as well in Islamabad. It's very difficult for Chinese, particularly the journalists, to get information from government sources. So it seemed to be a very dominating stuff you guys done. I'm really glad to know it. You may share with us, because you are an editor there and you know about the situation. Thank you.
A lot of the company filings, people just hadn't read, and read thoroughly. Other things were websites where Hanergy had been looking for advertising for loans, looking for loans. They had, there was also, they were doing fundraising activity that was online and that Lucy had found through other documents, other brochures. So some of this stuff was there, but for gathering and collating and understanding that there might have been a pattern here. I know in the factories they did a lot of discussions with people who were helpful. But you know, the actual documents about the factories, but we had a good understanding of what was going on in the factories, and we asked them. The one thing about the Hanergy interview, it was quite a long interview, and we asked them every possible question we could, and then we went back with, you know, written questions. I think after our second story, they stopped responding to our, you know, they just wouldn't, no comment to our questions. But that one interview was really helpful. And then Mr. Lee went on CNBC and said certain things, and we just started watching him through all media and things he was saying about the company. I mean, what they said to us, you know, several times in the interview is, you just don't understand this new technology and this evolving technology. And that's true, because it's an evolving technology that other companies haven't been able to perfect, and maybe they have the golden secret and they will be able to perfect it, but the factories, at least the output, and what they told us was the output, it seemed like they were having a hard go. So, you know, if you read the stories, I mean, we go as far as we can, basically raising questions and just giving their answers. And when one of the executives, whose name I can't remember right now, but, you know, he said, you know, lots of people are asking that question. They don't understand our business model, and neither did we.
Thank you. Mike there? Oh, Ivan, and then yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Ellen Tordesillas. I'm from the Philippines. I know the officials that you investigate, the Tianjin explosion and the other, these are former officials, right?
Yep.
Did I hear it right when you said that you can't investigate officials who are in power now? Did I get it right? I mean, can you investigate officials who are in power, and especially officials who are in the good graces of
okay.
the...
To be specific, like, yes, you can, you can investigate, like, all the officials, but the problem is that after your investigation, you can't publish that if the high-ranking officials are still in power. So in China basically, we have a rule which is not written in the paper. I guess all the journalists know that, is that if the official is above the provincial level, then, and he is still in power, and there's no signs indicating that he's going to be placed under investigation, then you will know that you could never publish any investigation, I think, on him. But if you got clues, or you hear rumors that he might be placed under investigation, then it's time for you to start, and then you just wait for a time when until the central government released that that official has been placed under investigation. Then it's a time for you to publish the story. There will be no more risks for you. But for county level officials, you can publish investigations on them, because they don't have the ability to threaten you. But okay, is that clear?
And there's a saying in China, you can go after dead tigers.
Yes.
Tigers that's already arrested, put away, dead tigers. And for living tigers, above the provincial level, stay away.
Yeah.
And then the other trick is that you work very hard and on someone who's suspected to be in trouble soon, right? Like this guy, Zhou Yongkang, the former security chief. There's a rumor going around that he's going to get arrested. So smart reporters and media start collecting information on him, right? And one night when it was announced that he's been arrested, everybody released the story. You raised to release the story, and that was exactly what happened. Right? So there's an art to it, you know. So Mike Shinoy over there.
I'm Mike Shinoy from the U.S.-China Institute at the University of Southern California. I used to be CNN's China correspondent. Iman, I want on the same sort of issue of publishing. The central government made pretty clear quickly after the explosion that the media were supposed to follow the guidelines of the official state news agencies. So I'm interested if you could share a little bit of, you snuck in, you got in disguise, you got all this material. What was the conversation like with your editors about publishing it, given that the government was trying to maintain quite strict control and you had essentially gone around all of those restrictions to get information? What was the conversation like with your editor? Did they say, this is too important, we have to do it anyway? Did they say, well, we better check with the government first and tell them we have this and then we're going to do it and get permission? How did that process work?
I should have mentioned this. Some of the conversations are shared here, and don't put it on Twitter, all right? Because our two young reporters have to go back to work. Okay, Iman.
It's always, can you hear me? There are always gameplays, but I'm not an editor, so usually they will try to push forward the red line, and maybe it will success, and maybe the report will be killed, and we don't know. We often don't know, but we can try. Just in this case, what's that? Central Propaganda Department. Yeah. They have several bans immediately after the explosion. My editor, he didn't know whether we can publish reports, but it's huge. It's a big event, so the reporters will go there first and do whatever we can do to dig the truth, to find the news, and we found that more than 1,000, at least more than 1,000 reporters were there, and we were fighting together. And fortunately, we shared the pressure, and the propaganda officials, they cannot control so many media at one time. So everybody, they are publishing and putting the news online, and I think the central government maybe they compromised a little. And it's always compromise between the media and the government. So we have to try, and we have to push forward the line. Okay.
Well, Tianjin explosion is definitely an unusual event, but because of it's so devastating, because of the scale of destruction is so high, and also casualties and this explosion, you have reporters really push the limit. They went into the scene, went to the site, wrote stories, and when the stories could not get into the print, they put it online, they put it on social media. The stories were deleted on social media, but the words get out, and they were posted elsewhere. It was quite phenomenal for that. And we have all the young reporters who were there. And they also have created we call it a WeChat group. It's a group that they share information.
500.
More than 500 signed up in the group. And they share information. And so you compete, but there's also camaraderie in sharing information and helping each other with the goal of getting the story out. And it's quite stunning that happens. Kunda?
I'm speaking tomorrow at a session on disaster reporting, and I wanted to ask the Chinese reporters, looking at it from outside, it seems that disasters in China, initially, the media seems to be quite free in reporting about them. For example, the Sichuan earthquake, the Shanghai train disaster, and then recently the explosion. But then, perhaps after a few days or maybe a week, then the clampdown starts. Could you explain why you see this pattern in almost every disaster?
Maybe you said about in the beginning, reporters were quite free to report. Then in about a week, then the crackdowns starts. Is that what happened and why?
Not really,
No.
because I
Okay, first.
because I remember during the Sichuan earthquake and the Shanghai train, they will. The Chinese media also got directives from the Central Propaganda Department. In China, the directives go this way. Some are just issued by the Central Propaganda Department, but provincial propaganda department can also issue the directives to different media outlets, and they also use different speeches. So if it is a directive from the Central Propaganda Department and they use very strong speech, then I'm afraid that almost like most of the media would withdraw from the same. But if they use light speech, like kind of like better not send the reporters to the scene. Better use report by Xinhua and CCTV footage. Then you know you can stay there and keep publishing stories. And if it's a directive from the provincial level propaganda department, you can ignore them sometimes. Yes, schools.
Yeah.
And then I think there are also aspects of reporting. So on that school constructions issue, that was banned.
Yeah,
Right.
Yes.
there are always sensitive points of each event. So just like the Tianjin, you can report the sodium cyanide. You can report the environment impact, but you can hardly report the public what's that? The people living around the site.
Protest.
The protest.
Yeah, protest. You can.
Yeah. If you start to like focus on the protest or questioning the local government, and you keep asking why, and then they will start like sensitive, and they will give you like directives.
The stability is really important.
Because usually when a disaster happens, in the first few days, the media outlets will report like what is going on, the death toll, and like what the government is helping the local people to like restore. Then it's fine. And also, but when the death toll rises to a certain degree, and then if you are doubting that the government is not releasing the real number, and then you make a
But still, China has made a lot of progress.
Yeah.
Because going back to 1976, you have the Tangshan earthquake. 250,000 people died in that earthquake. The number of deaths was a state secret, and wasn't released, reported 3 years later by Xinhua. Right? And today, you can report the number of casualties immediately.
Yeah.
Right? So, well, things change, takes time. Okay? I think our time is up. So thank you very much. Let's give our panelists a hand. And I want to also give a plug to Mike's film tomorrow on covering China. And it's a world premiere of his documentary on coverage of recent top government officials, right? Okay? So please come tomorrow, okay?